they are calling it tech apnea, email apnea, holding your breath while you're scrolling, holding your breath while you're checking your emails, checking social media. It's like waiting for that next onslaught of the itty bitty shitty committee telling us things that we don't deserve or that are absolutely untrue, but that some part of us from childhood actually believes. So when we are turning to breath work, it's really important to understand your body, understand the mechanics of how the breath actually works. Those are important tools, of course, and to really carve out the space for yourself. When we tell ourselves that we're going to do something, create unrealistic expectations, or otherwise essentially lie to ourselves about what we're going to do, it breaks trust. So if we have this unrealistic to-do list of things to do, or if we overcommit ourselves professionally, saying yes when we mean no, or if we prioritize others above ourselves because we're a mother and we feel like we should take care of the children first, we're going to end up in a place where we actually don't trust ourselves. And you are the most permanent relationship in your life. The most permanent relationship in your life. So in order to install these more positive beliefs, we need to remember that the adults are here now. And even though it's the child self who's telling us to abandon ourselves in order to get love from someone else, I need to get these things done so that I will feel relevant in this world. I need to say yes to these commitments professionally so that I won't have other ideas about myself or feel like other people don't respect me. Or I need to give to my children because that makes me a good mother. What we need to do is we need to recognize that there is subconscious programming. So when we're faced with overwhelming anxiety, when we have these stress, panicky moments, it's likely because we have been living life for somebody else. And we're going to get more granular on this, and we're going to dive in deep on this, especially in the Exhale the Overwhelm course. But this is really about becoming the witness and taking your power back. And so what do I mean by that? When you become the witness and look from the outside of instead of being in the movie, this is how we take our power back. Because when we're in the situation and we don't feel capable and we don't feel smart and we don't feel like we can handle this, then the itty bitty shitty committee takes over and it's in charge. Your mind is brilliant. It's just those disempowering core beliefs at the root that we are going to learn to eradicate as we move forward with Exhale the Overwhelm and with all of the programs that we offer. You are so capable. Your mind is brilliant and strategic. Unfortunately, when it gets stressed, the mind becomes really loud, and it becomes loud really fast. Oftentimes, it can get really mean on top of it. And it doesn't matter if you're a high achieving professional or a mom, or if you're retired, the itty bitty shitty committee is there. And we don't have to let it be the loudest voice. We don't have to let it run the show. And in case you don't know, that itty bitty shitty committee, that's just that loop of inner criticism, that worst case scenario thinking, trying to keep us safe. It's that voice of self-doubt. And unfortunately, there's a lot of perfectionism in there. And trying to be perfect is just completely unrealistic. We are perfectly imperfect. There's absolutely no reason to hold ourselves to such a standard that we should expect ourselves to be perfect. And if somebody did that to you when you were younger, it would make a lot of sense that today you would have unrealistic expectations about what life should look like. And I always say, don't should on yourself. And that is intentional. Don't should on yourself, because here's the truth. It's not you. It's a protective loop. Any should is usually coming from the outside. It's some expectation that somebody else put on you, or that you think somebody put on you, or that you've carried over from childhood. And the truth is, it's a subconscious system that is built to keep you safe. And it's built through control and hypervigilance over the years and over analysis. Raise your hand if you understand that. Hypervigilance over analysis, trying to control everything. When we don't examine the itty bitty shitty committee, this loop begins to really scream instead of whisper. And it casts you in those three roles of victim, rescuer, and persecutor. You might have heard it differently: the victim, the villain, and the hero. The victim is always asking, why does this happen to me? And needing rescuing, right? And then the rescuer or the hero is like, oh, let me fix everything so that I can save this person, or so that no one gets upset at me, so I can look good. And then there's the persecutor or the villain, and they end up being harder on themselves because they feel like they're going to fall behind. We often are our own persecutors, right? Our own villains. It's that itty bitty shitty committee that is the villain inside. And this is the classic drama that we're talking about, that trifecta, those things that get played out in movies and TVs, and, you know, obviously on every single book you've ever read, you need at least those three characters, but it is an internal drama. It's a mindset. And in reality, it's a neurological feedback loop that's very, very real. So when we spike into overwhelm or experience a full-blown panic attack, it's just a moment where your system floods with fear. And it may feel like you're losing control. But let's unpack what's really happening during these moments of severe overwhelm, panic, or what some people just think is normal stress and are coming to these programs for. So this inner itty bitty shitty committee actually lives in what's called the default mode network, the DMN. This is actually not a single place in the brain, but it's a group of brain regions, and they are constantly scanning for danger. The amygdala is a really important piece of that, and that's where all your sensations come through. So this default mode network is scanning for danger, and it's also constructing stories about what's happening. So when you have this moment of high stress, or it could be an emotional threat, it is that amygdala that's going to fire the alarm first. All of your sensations go into the amygdala, and it has one job: safe or not safe. And if it does not feel safe, that's when we go into that state of fight or flight, or the 4 F's of stress: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. We'll get more into that later on. The hypothalamus then gets signaled, gets tripped. This is your HPA axis, and it's going to release cortisol and adrenaline. I'm sure you've heard about cortisol and adrenaline. You know what adrenaline is, right? We need this when there's a real emergency. And that cortisol is really, really helpful when it floods the system, and then the system is allowed to relax. But when we're in this constant state of hypervigilance, stress, anxiety, overwhelm, the cortisol is really damaging on the brain, the body, the nervous system. So everything's coming into the amygdala. Then the HPA axis gets tripped. Your body is flooded with all these hormones: cortisol, adrenaline. And of course, your brain is going to say, listen, this is an emergency. We don't need to be logical right now. We actually need to cut off any communication to this prefrontal cortex. This is where the brain makes all of the higher level thinking decisions. It's our logic, our planning, and it shuts down the prefrontal cortex because that's a later area of the brain. It's an area of the brain that actually developed later. It's in the neocortex, and it goes into the limbic system and says, we don't need all these higher level thinking. We need to survive. Then something called insula, which is your body's awareness center, gets flooded with all of these signals that are coming in from the brain, signals from the gut, from the chest, from the throat. So you've literally lost your rational thought. And this is what happens in the body. Your breath tightens. Your chest feels like it's constricting. So even though you might be breathing more, you might feel like you can't breathe. Your vision narrows. You might even feel like disconnected. You might feel super connected. You might feel like hot or shaky or cold, but usually like you can't breathe. And this is not a dramatization. It's not you being dramatic. And somebody telling you to calm down is not going to help. This is your sympathetic nervous system on overdrive. Basically, your panic attack or overwhelm or super stressful moment is your body mismatching the perception of threat and what's actually happening. So your body thinks that something is super life-threatening. Your body is like, this is not okay. And you have no logic anymore because the prefrontal cortex has been cut off. And the body is going to listen to the body. The brain is where the logic is, right? The body is going to believe the alarm. So then this becomes a self-reinforcing loop. Basically, you have a thought, which is being driven by the sensations that you're feeling. The amygdala says, we need to sound the alarm. It's a fear response, fight or flight, even though it might look like anger, even though it might look like sadness or depression. Then you are experiencing the sensations of the fear. And so we interpret that as more fear. And this is how we could have a panic attack or slide into some sense of overwhelm. But the good news is you can intervene, and it's not through thinking. So you can intervene, and it is not through thinking. So today I'm going to give you 3 very specific tools that involve the breath, but are ancillary in that, of course, everything involves the breath. If we stop breathing, we die. But they are related in some way to allow you to slip into your body and stop being so much in the head, right? You've heard the phrase, get out of the head and into the body. So we're going to talk specifically about vocal anchoring, sensory discharge, and extending the exhale. And you've probably heard of extending the exhale, but I believe that after we do those first 2 things, you're going to have a better sense of how actually to do that. So vocal anchoring. We may not realize it, but safety is really a sensation. It's not a thought. And when we are able to activate the vagus nerve, this will restore calm. So it's a really simple practice. You've probably heard me talk about it before if you've seen some of my other workshops or been on my YouTube channel. And it's just the simple practice of humming. So when we inhale into the nose and exhale out of the nose with a you can extend it with a monotone or a keeping the mouth closed and inhaling into the nose and exhaling out of the nose with the vibration. This area right here is the only place on our body, the only place on the body where we can willfully vibrate at any moment. We can choose to vibrate. And it's been scientifically proven that humming activates the vagus nerve. It's going to activate the parasympathetic nervous system when we do it over and over again. So you can do this anytime, anywhere with eyes open. Of course, it's much more powerful if you close your eyes in a safe space. And you can say something to yourself internally, like, I'm safe in my body. I feel the vibrations in my body. And that anchors you in the body. So this vocal anchoring engages the sensations. Remember, everything comes into the amygdala as sensation, and that has one job: safe or not safe. So when we actually feel in control and are changing our physiology and changing the way that things sound around us and actually changing the way that we're hearing ourselves in our environment, especially cutting off 10 million of those 11 million sensory receptors, that's going to change our experience. And when we do it over and over again, like set a timer for 8 minutes or 10 minutes, this will change your life. So that's vocal anchoring. The second tool I'm going to talk about today is sensory discharge. So we've talked about this stress cycle that happens in the body. The body wants to go into this stress cycle. It's hearing things, it's experiencing things, and then it's hearing and feeling more of the stress, and it continues, and you might end up in a full-blown attack. So sensory discharge is really, really simple. You want to, I mean, you've seen stress balls, right? Nowadays, they have the fidgets, things like that. Well, here's something that you don't need a ball for, and you don't need a fidget spinner. All you need is your own body. So simply take your palms and press them together hard for 10 seconds as you breathe in and out of the nose, pressing them together, really articulating through each of those joints. And then shake your hands out, shake them over your head, shake them all around you. And then come back into the body. So this, like the vocal anchoring, is really anchoring you in the body by allowing you a sensory discharge. If this is uncomfortable on the wrists for some reason, you can do 10 seconds this way. So a lot of people have wrist issues as professionals. And then you can do 10 seconds this way. Actually doing wrist to wrist. This is a really nice way and very different, something that we don't typically do. And then shake your hands out, shake your hands out. And then just land in the body. It's going to land us in the now, because what's happening during these stress cycles, panic, overwhelm, is we're thinking into the future based off of problems in the past. Of course, we know that the subconscious reprogramming that you can learn in my programs, that's how we actually move the needle, because it's the itty bitty shitty committee telling us really disempowering things. But just this simple anchoring in the body is going to help us to get out of that future tripping based off past traumas or dramas. They don't actually have to be severe traumas. So now you've learned a little bit of vocal anchoring and sensory discharge. Let's put them together. That's about 10 seconds. And then you can switch to the other side, do the same thing for 10 seconds, shake the hands out, and then rest in the body. Become present, be in the body. Because whenever we're future tripping based off of some trauma or drama in the past, it's not serving us, and we're not right here, right now. And the only time that we can breathe and be in the body is right here, right now. So that's where we need to turn. This sensory discharge satisfies the cortex activation in your motor cortex. And it also has an effect of like signaling some sort of a resolution in your nervous system because you're actually affecting something, you have control over something. Of course, the subconscious reprogramming that we do is what's actually going to move the needle. And then the third is just simply extending the exhale. And this is prescribing something very specific about the breath. So whereas we were, yeah, that's adding the vocal activation, the vocal anchoring, and you're going to naturally extend the exhale. This, hopefully, you're able to extend the exhale and it's very tactile, but we can actually prescribe a certain number to the inhales and a certain number to the exhales in the following way. So you simply inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, all into the nose. And then you exhale 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you inhale to the same count of 4, same amount, same length into the nose. And you exhale, same count, same length, but the count is 8. To the count of 8. And at first, you might not get through all 8 because your body is not wanting to do that, right? It's wanting to go into the default mode network and do what we think is keeping us safe, which is probably breathing in and out of the mouth instead of breathing in and out of the nose. So you can choose a number like 6 or 10, maybe even something like 5, and just inhale to a mental count of 4 and exhale to a mental count of 8. This is going to activate the parasympathetic nervous system and have an automatic calming response. The reason why this works, the extending of the exhale, think of your system as like a smart electric car. Your nervous system is really elegant and really fast and very responsive, just like a smart electric car. But instead of running on gears or electricity or even gas, your nervous system runs on your breath. And most literally, every time you inhale, you're tapping the accelerator on your nervous system. This is science. I'm giving you an analogy, but this is actually science. So when you inhale, it tells the heart to speed up. So every time you inhale, it's like tapping the accelerator, pressing the accelerator. Your heart speeds up and your system prepares for action. When you exhale, it's like taking your foot off the gas, like in an electric car. You don't actually have to push the brakes. But when you take your foot off the gas, that essentially decelerates. The exhale does the exact same thing in the body. Like when you're driving a golf cart, if you've never driven an electric car, maybe you've driven a golf cart or seen how you really have to be pressing the gas the whole time. It's not going to coast, right? It's that default setting. So when you exhale, your heart rate slows and it allows your system to signal safety. So if you know much about the diaphragm, you know that it's actually a muscle that's shaped like this right here, like where the rib cage meets the belly. And every time you inhale, it flexes and it flattens. That's what makes us call it a belly breath, because it's actually pressing your internal organs out in that space where there are no ribs. And it's not really that you're breathing into the belly, it's just that you're inflating the lungs, because most people are not using the full capacity of their lungs. The diaphragm's up here and the lungs are not being fully inflated with the flexion of the diaphragm, just like the pressing of the gas. But the diaphragm is a one-way flex muscle. You can't unflex it, you just relax it. You just don't use it. And that's like taking your foot off the gas and allowing the nervous system to slow down. Here is the beauty of all of this. You are the driver. You've been allowing your nervous system to drive you without thinking about it. It's been on autopilot, driven by the thoughts that were put there from the subconscious mind. When we step into our power and choose, then we get to become the conscious driver and notice where we're breathing, how we're breathing, in what situations we're breathing in certain ways. Notice the thoughts. It's about becoming that witness. This is how we become the witness, by simply observing what's going on in the body, observing what's going on in the lungs. So you don't have to slam on the brakes and you don't have to floor the gas. You just learn the natural rhythm of the ride. So now you know a little bit of the science. Let's talk about this practice of becoming the witness. This is not about inner observation without judgment. I mean, we need judgment. We need to be able to judge if something's actually safe or not safe. We don't want to get rid of this judger altogether, but we want to be able to observe with curiosity and be like, isn't that interesting? That's what my body thinks. My body, I can tell, thinks that this person's unsafe. My brain, I can tell, is telling me that I don't need to do this task, that I need to put it off. But what is my body telling me? When our mind tells us something like, oh, I don't want to go to that party, I'm going to be rejected, we may not actually be consciously aware of it. But when you build this skill of inner observation, which starts in the body, and when we use the breath, then we can make sure that we're not letting our itty bitty shitty committee run the show. And you can learn to hear those different voices, like the victim or the hero or the villain. And you can anchor in your body whenever you're hearing and noticing those different parts of you that are coming up. You can use the breath and use these little pauses to interrupt the autopilot and choose again. And you can shift that drama triangle. You can choose to shift from victim into creator. You can choose to shift from hero into coach. And you can choose to shift from persecutor or villain into challenger, a healthy way. This is how you learn to start recognizing your patterns without just falling into them. It's from witnessing and coming at everything with curiosity. So it's not that we need to have complete silence in our head. It's that we just need to be sovereign. You can let the committee, the itty bitty shitty committee, speak. You can let the body alert you, and then you can step back and be the witness and decide what you're going to actually take in as fact and what you're going to notice is fiction. And it's only by continuing to be the witness over and over again that we can learn to choose whether or not to sound that alarm. This is about a total system reset. So just to recap, we've covered a lot today. Of course, we know that subconscious reprogramming, which you can learn about in our courses, that's the way to actually change the itty bitty shitty committee from the inside out. And when we notice ourselves holding our breath, we can get curious. Because remember, the only difference between panic attack and an orgasm are your thoughts. And when we notice that we're having disempowering thoughts, or even if we're having just difficulty, we can start to try to figure out, what is the emotion? What is the vibration? Where am I feeling this? And this is about taking that first step toward improving the relationship that we have with ourselves. But this doesn't work if you don't work it. Even with a brilliant, strategic, and capable mind, our mind can get really loud really fast. So it's about calling that itty bitty shitty committee out and saying, listen, you're stuck in victimhood. You're being a villain, or you're trying to be a hero. This is how we get overcommitted, overworked, and overwhelmed, and how it can end up in a panic attack. Remember that default mode network is where everything is coming in, and it's your sympathetic nervous system on overdrive that turns you into that thought loop of the thoughts causing fear, then the sensations being interpreted as more fear. So we learned about vocal anchoring to activate the vagus nerve. We learned about sensory discharge in a couple of different ways to signal to your nervous system that it's okay to resolve this. And we learned about a very specific way to extend the exhale. All of these things are putting you in the driver's seat of your own electric smart car. Otherwise, you end up with that sinus, it's called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. I didn't give you the full-on explanation of it, but it's where your breath is actually tied to your heart, and where your heart and your breath are connected. And so when you have that arrhythmia, it's going to cause problems, especially if we don't know how to actually stimulate it and lower our heart rate naturally. So this is about becoming the witness, not just physiologically, but inside. So it doesn't mean we get rid of judgment altogether. It's just noticing when we're stepping into the drama triangle in some way, and instead stepping into the creatorship of our lives and recognizing those patterns. You get to decide. The committee can speak and the body can alert you, but you get to decide. You get to decide how you feel. You get to decide what you're going to let come in and what you're going to let go of. And of course, the subconscious reprogramming is where it all begins to change, because these tools and tips and tricks and techniques and technologies, they'll get you so far. They'll be like little Band-Aids. But until we get to the root cause, we're not going to be able to fix the itty bitty shitty committee. And it's really even not about fixing. It's just about becoming the witness so that the thoughts can come up and we decide, isn't that interesting? Is that how I want to feel? Is that how I want to think? That's how we take our power back. Thank you.